Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Corlick from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be talking about this. This is the Battler GC and the Blade GC from Retro Fighters for our friend, the Nintendo GameCube. Before we do that though, if you guys could do me a favor, please like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't done that already, as well as go into the description. You'll see a whole bunch of social media stuff. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, all that stuff. If you guys could go to those places, support me, follow me on Twitter, etc., I appreciate that. Really, I do. It helps to keep the channel going and to, you know, advertise it a little bit more, to be completely honest with you guys. Also, there's a new channel link in there to a place called Flying and Eating, which is my travel channel where I go to a whole bunch of places and I take you guys along for that journey, give a lot of travel tips, especially for places like Japan, more exotic places like some of the United States territories that a lot of people don't go to, etc. I appreciate that. And honestly, if you join the Discord and you become a regular, at some point you'll probably appear on that channel, like half of them do. But anyway, so yes, let's talk about these controllers. Now, these controllers come from Retro Fighters, and full disclosure on that, Retro Fighters sent me these two over here for free for the purposes of review. These two were sent completely independently and separately by Stone Age Gamer, which is a great online retailer for a bunch of retro game stuff. If you like these controllers or really anything else that they have, I'll put links to both of their websites in the description. Support both, whichever one you prefer, whatever you want to do, links are there. So thank you to both Retro Fighters and to Stone Age Gamer for the hookup. Now, Retro Fighters, who also made these controllers, I'm going to be honest, they have a tendency to never really tell me when they're sending me anything. Stuff just kind of shows up. So that's nice of them, which I appreciate. So happy to talk about it. I think that they make good stuff. I've been doing videos on their products for a few years now. I mean, they entirely focus on controllers, to be fair. But basically, their philosophy seems to have always been, hey, modern tastes have changed as far as controllers go. We expect this more ergonomic design, kind of like a PlayStation or an Xbox controller. What if we updated retro consoles to have those type of more modern controllers? Like I said, I've done videos on, they have a Dreamcast one, there's NES, Genesis, Saturn, well, to be fair, that's the same controller, N64, etc. They've done a bunch. So you can go back and watch those if you want. But this is their, you know, take on the GameCube. And they did two versions. Which is kind of funny. Like I said, Retro Fighters didn't actually send me the Blade GC. They sent me two of the Battler GCs, one black, one purple. I think there's also an orange one. While Stone Age Gamer sent me the Blade GC and the Battler GC, again, a black and a purple one. So, basic thing to assess here, if I'm sure you're familiar, but let's take a look at the GameCube controller. This is a standard one, sort of. Actually, to be fair, this one was tricked out by a buddy of mine, Rocker Gaming, who's another YouTuber, custom faceplate and all that sort of stuff. Actually, he also customized my GameCube there, which is why there's a little Adam Corlick cartoon character on there, so that's pretty sweet, huh? Anyway, so I did videos on that as well. But yeah, that one's awesome. This GameCube's got like HDMI mods, lights, you know, it's crazy. So the GameCube controller. Now, I'm old enough to remember when this thing was coming out and people were looking at it like, what is this thing? Because like the layout was really strange. You know, you had the one thumbstick in the upper left, you have one down there in the lower right, which was really meant to replicate, it says on there, you know, the C buttons, which we were all coming off the N64. So we're like, oh, you're taking those 4 buttons and just putting them into a thumbstick. That's crazy. But anyway, not knowing that dual thumbsticks would become kind of the future. But anyway, this is a controller that people are super passionate about, right? And obviously, Nintendo themselves has re-released it a bunch of times, most notably for Smash. And that's, we got to talk Smash for a split second. Smash is a very passionate community. That's the only way I can put that. And I'm sure that nothing I can say would make them want to switch controllers. I'm not attempting to get anybody to do that. So all I'm going to say is, while they probably put a lot of effort in these for the Smash players, I mean, hence the name Battler, my guess would be that that's not going to change anybody's opinion, and I'm not trying to do that either. So GameCube is a controller that people are very passionate about, either love it or hate it, but it's always an extreme opinion. So yeah, this is a good controller. I really like it, but it was strange when it came out. But to this day, just kind of melts into your hand. Really like it. Now, Retro Fighters, from what I can tell, was basically going at this kind of focusing on one niche area. The fundamental problem with the GameCube controller, aside from the fact that it's still in high demand, despite Nintendo re-releasing it, it's not impossible to get one. It's not a Nuon controller. But like, the big issue is Nintendo has never bothered to update or re-release the Wavebird. The Wavebird was Nintendo's wireless version of a GameCube controller, and I would argue the first wireless controller that was actually good. But it had a couple of flaws. One, and this isn't its fault, it was the technology at the time, it ran on AA batteries. So that's antiquated tech now. It's not rechargeable, obviously, and they get expensive, etc. So people don't really want to deal with that, right? The dongle was a little funky, having to sync them up, but again, different era, different technologies. But the biggest one, once you get past those little hurdles, aside from the price as they are now, is really just the fact that it lacked any sort of rumble support. I think this was Retro Fighter's attempt to kind of hone in on the niche that wants a wireless GameCube controller and wants an updated one in some sense, and also doesn't want to break the bank to do it. So that's why you get these. But they also gave you two choices. So that's where you get the Battler GC and the Blade GC. There's really only two differences between the two. One is the name, which is obvious. In fact, if you look at the back, every single word in the description is exactly to the letter the same words, with two changes. One, the name. The other is when you get to this part about the analog sticks. On the Battler GC, it says offset analog stick placement. And on the Blade GC, it says inline analog stick placement. And all they mean by that is the original thumbsticks were offset from each other. They weren't linear, like, right across. Whereas the Blade GC, they are. They match each other. That's all it really is. Now, why would you do two versions? The Battler GC just attempts to equate the original mapping scheme for anybody who got really used to the GameCube controller and wanted it that way. The Blade GC seems to be focused more on games that didn't necessarily benefit from that sort of layout, and so that you could use it with other things. So that's where that one gets a little interesting. This one was designed more for like the Game Boy player, which of course we have right here. Nintendo themselves, even back in the day, did like a Super Nintendo style controller for the GameCube, specifically for the Game Boy player. Most of us would prefer playing those type of games with a big D-pad and kind of ignoring the thumbsticks altogether. And hypothetically, there are some GameCube games like platformers and things where you'd want more access to a big D-pad instead of this kind of like little wimpy one. So I think that's why they did that. That would make the most sense. So in addition to that, let's go over some of the features on the back. Both of them feature all the same stuff. So it's 2.4 gigahertz wireless Bluetooth technology, which I've never really had any problems with. I've heard some people say that if they get too close to certain other Bluetooth devices off-putting that signal, that theoretically it can come up with some sort of, interruptions, but I've never personally experienced that, but, full disclosure. They claim pressure-sensitive buttons. Obviously, both have vibration. We'll get back to this in a second. But they're compatible with the GameCube, the Game Boy Player, the Wii, the Wii U, Switch, and PC. Like I said, we'll get back to that in a second. As we just discussed, they have the difference in the analog stick placement. Then it also says responsive analog sticks. Sorry, I was thinking of the shoulders. We have the dual Z shoulder buttons. We have wireless charging, wireless range of 30 feet, and then it's got USB-C charging. That's what I was trying to say. So the thumbsticks, I keep screwing that up. The triggers on the back are actually, this might bother people. These are not designed like the original, click. Do you remember that click in the GameCube controller? These are designed more like DualSense, like PS5 thumb triggers. So people may not like that, and then some people might. It's really hard to say. But let's focus in on that compatibility there. Obviously, this thing was built for the GameCube, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. But it does list a few other things. Game Boy Player, yes. It functions with the Game Boy Player because obviously it would, because it's a GameCube controller, right? So that makes sense. Where, like I said, I think the Blade GC is really just meant to, specifically for that. Then you have the Wii, the Wii U, the Switch, and the PC. The PC is kind of a nothing because it comes with a USB dongle, it connects, your PC will understand it, and you can just kind of use it like you would any sort of USB controller. It's more of a bonus function. Switch is kind of in the same area. This was not built for the Switch. But Retro Fighters has a tendency to make all their controllers work on the Switch at this point. Probably because it's easy and because it gives it more market viability. And if you are the kind of person who's like, hey, maybe I'll buy this one controller, it's nice to know that you're sort of getting a Switch Pro controller in the same box. It makes it easier to swallow that financial pill. Then you have the Wii and the Wii U. These are the two most interesting ones, but for totally different reasons. The Wii... The thing with the Wii, it's obviously not my favorite console, as I've made clear over the years, but the Wii, the thing that they're not mentioning on the box is that you need a Wii that actually is GameCube compatible, like one of the early ones that actually has all four of the controller ports, because the USB dongle in here doesn't do anything on the Wii. So you'd actually need the original GameCube support. And then from that point, it'll play all your GameCube games as be expected. And then it'll actually also work with the Wii games that use the GameCube controller, like Mario Kart Wii, I think was one of them, etc. So it should work with all those. But then that's cool, that's great. But it doesn't work with, like, obviously Wii games that never used it. And then later editions of the Wii that didn't support those controller ports, it's not going to do anything. So then we get to the Wii U. I kind of question why they even put this one on the box, to be honest, because it really doesn't work with the Wii U. The Wii U has the USB ports, obviously. You put this in there. Your controller will actually sync. It just won't do anything, which is unfortunate. But what it will do is that, if you remember, Nintendo released a GameCube controller adapter for the Wii U specifically for Smash Brothers. This will work with that so that you can play Smash Brothers on the Wii U with this controller. That's really about it. Outside of that, if you have a hacked Wii U and you're running something like Nintendo and you're using the GameCube emulation and all that, then this will work. Again, requiring that extra dongle bit that Nintendo released. But it's not like this is suddenly a Wii U Pro controller, which is unfortunate. That would have been pretty cool, but I could see why that wouldn't work. But regardless, those are the two things or really the compatibility things to know up front. This may or may not work on things like the Genesis Mini or whatever. It doesn't mention it, so whatever. Let's just focus on what it was intended to be, which is a affordable wireless GameCube controller, and how does it function in that regard. So in order to do that, we need to open these up and actually take a look at them. So let's start here with the Battler GC. On this, I'll just open the black ones because it'll match the console, which I think is nice. So beyond that initial box, you get the little cardboard packing box. And inside of that, we have a few things. First, we have the controller itself, which is kind of wrapped in this foam stuff to protect it. Then you have a couple of additional things. An instruction manual that largely goes over everything we just talked about, including the syncing process, which is supposed to be very easy. I'll let you know if for some reason that isn't, but it should be just fine. Essentially, just you'll figure it out. If not, read the thing. But basically, sync button, turn it on, all that. I'm sure you've synced a controller before. And inside this, you have a little cardboard box that has a couple of items that you will need. One is the little GameCube dongle, which is substantially smaller than the original dongle, but just plugs right in there. And it actually matches the color of the controller, so that's kind of nice. And in this case, would also match the color of the console. And then on top of that, there's a little USB dongle, which again matches the color of the controller. So this one, this is what you would use if you were going to use it on, say, the Switch or the PC. And if you ever do a firmware update, which occasionally they do firmware updates, then this is what you would need to actually do that. So that's cool. But we probably won't use that much, at least for this video. It also comes with a USB-C charging cable, which is nice. And they've started branding them with Retro Fighters in them, which is also good. And then beyond that, there is also the controller itself. So first impressions in holding it. It's comfortable. It's weird, going from that click to kind of the PS5 DualSense style. I mean, obviously, I'm going to have to play with it for a while and kind of come up with, a final opinion, but it feels nice enough. It feels lighter than the GameCube controller. I mean, maybe that's just first impression talking, but it's just, yeah. Now, it has a few buttons on it that you will not need for the GameCube, because it also functions, as we said, with the Switch, so it has a few extra buttons, the plus, the minus, the home button, all that sort of stuff. There's also a turbo button, which actually does work with the GameCube. I would actually be very curious to see what this does in, say, Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, like when Revolver Ocelot's torturing you, and he says, "Don't use a turbo button, or I'll know." Would you, dude? Would you? Maybe Retro Fighters beat you. But anyway, in order for that to work, my understanding is you hold down the turbo button and then just press whatever button you want to turbo, and it should just do that. So I guess there's some games where that could be really useful. That's the one that comes to my mind. But yeah, so this is the more traditional layout one. Seems fine. Let's put that off to the side, and then we will open up the Blade GC, which should be honestly a very similar process here. So let's just kind of power through it, put the box there, and open up the cardboard inside. If there's anything different, nope, it's all the same stuff, the manual, the cable, the dongle, all that. So let's put that over there. And then we get, actually, you know what I will do? I will show you the dongle connected to the console, just so you can get a sense of what it would look like if you bought multiples of these, and what your GameCube would end up looking like, which is that. Yeah, see, that actually looks pretty nice. They look pretty good, just connected to each other like that. So this one, obviously, the layout is different. I mean, Yeah, this feels again more like a PlayStation controller by design. It is comfortable. It really is. This one would definitely be the one I would want to play platformers with. I would have to, again, this would be a case by case basis. I'm spoiled obviously because I now have both of them, so I can kind of try both and see which games on a specific basis I would like. But yeah, so that's just first impressions. So what I have to do now is like anything like this and Retro Fighter, although they didn't mention it this time, but usually they tell you like, hey, go charge the thing for a while and don't use it until that's done. So that could take a couple hours. So I'm gonna go plug these in, let them charge. Okay guys, so I've been using these things for a while now and it's time for final thoughts. First and foremost, I was mistaken earlier. If you guys remember, I basically mentioned that usually you have to charge these things. They usually include a little note saying as such. They didn't do it this time and there's a reason. These controllers basically came fully charged. I don't know why they suddenly started doing that, but that's awesome on their part. So you basically can start playing it as soon as you get it, which is pretty neat. Interestingly, though, I did notice when I was trying to charge them, they work perfectly fine with the cables they came with, which is USB-C to A cables. I tried using a C to C charger, and it didn't seem to do anything. So keep that in mind. I don't know if that really matters, but it was just a curiosity thing. So as far as actual game performance, let's focus more on the Battler GC first. This is the one, again, that's supposed to match the layout of a GameCube controller. I noticed that, so it doesn't actually say start anywhere on the controller. With the home button for the Switch is the start button for the GameCube controller. That kind of took me a second. The other buttons don't really do anything except for the turbo, which we mentioned. The turbo functionality, I did try it. That would be a very game-by-game basis if you actually need that or not. So, yeah, I didn't get all the way to Metal Gear Solid. I was playing Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, but I didn't get all the way to the Revolver Ocelot part to check that. But, like, you know, in some games it'll help, in some games it won't. I'm sure you guys are familiar with turbo buttons, but it seemed to work well enough. The controller is very comfortable. I enjoyed using it. It lasted a long time. Those kinds of normal retro fighters type of things that I would expect were all fine. So really I just wanted to talk about any sort of oddities or quirks. For the most part, solid. You know, I was having a couple of issues connecting it initially, so we got our little dongle there. And the dongle usually would connect relatively quickly, like it would go to a solid light state, but the controller didn't always see it. And so it would just kind of hang. That didn't happen super often, but it happened enough that I feel the need to tell you about it. For the most part, it was fine. I noticed every once in a while if I just unplug the dongle and then plug it back in, then it would connect. It's imperfect. You're taking newer stuff, trying to mix it with retro stuff. You're going to have a couple of quirks. Just be aware that it isn't always flawless in that regard. But once it actually connected, it was always fine. I didn't seem to have any lag issues or anything like that, so it was all good there. In regards to the rumble functionality, obviously it is there. I don't think it's as intense as the original version, though. You know, I was playing it, I wasn't really noticing it, and then when I actually went to pay attention to it, I realized it was a little bit weaker. Not necessarily a bad way, it's just not as strong of a punch. I ended up playing it for quite some time with Sonic Adventure and Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, and those are games I'm very familiar with, so I decided to play and see like how it would feel. With Sonic Adventure in particular, I didn't really notice anything. It seemed to run very nicely, and I mean, I kind of missed playing on the Dreamcast, but it seemed to work perfectly well. I also then, of course, played Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, and that one I actually did notice a quirk in there. For the most part, everything was totally fine, but Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes has a feature in it when you're playing with a stock GameCube controller that you will notice. So if you hold the triggers in the stock GameCube controller, like Snake's inventory will come up on the left or the right, and that's, you know, just so you can see what kind of items you have. Makes sense. So the GameCube specifically, the stock one, actually had this quick draw feature. So rather than hold the button, if you just kind of tap it, it would cycle between your current item and your previous item. So you could just, like, let's say, you know, you either wanted this gun or that gun, you could just click once and it would cycle between the two, that type of thing. Or from unarmed to armed, you know, you get what I'm saying. I tried that same functionality with this controller and it really didn't work properly. So you can see that here. Like, you would tap on it and it sometimes did it. Most of the time it wouldn't. I don't know if that's a hardware limitation because of the way they, you know, this is more of a PS5 style trigger as opposed to the original GameCube style. I don't know if that's fixable. If it is a firmware issue, then Retro Fighters, please take note of it. But outside of that, I didn't notice any sort of quirks. That same functionality may exist in other games. I genuinely don't know. It's just something I noticed. So let's take a look at the Blade GC. Obviously, basically the same controller except for the one obvious thing. That was kind of a game changer. So I decided to play some Game Boy games on it, and that was awesome. That was like, oh man, where has this controller been my whole life? Like, this would have been really nice to have. I get now why Nintendo, of course, put out that Super Nintendo controller in Japan. This is really good for that. It made me actually really wish I could use this on like a Super Nintendo. That would be really cool. Speaking of which, where is the Retro Fighter Super Nintendo controller? This is like, come on, what are you doing? It's right there. But anyway, yeah, so that was really nice. And I highly recommend it for that purpose. And this is, so overall, this is a good GameCube controller. It is a good controller in general. I can't say it'll replace your GameCube controller, maybe complement it. I could see, I'm going to be honest, I can see more of the need for this one, specifically because of the Game Boy Player functionality, than I can for this. This is specifically for people who want a Wavebird and can't afford it, and like the idea of a Rumble. This one, to me, fulfills a need that otherwise is not taken care of. Does that make sense? In addition to being able to work with the GameCube. Now, personally, I like both, but I'm also spoiled. I have all the toys, and I can already try them. So I like it a lot, but could I sit here and tell you that this is going to be like the best way to play a Smash game? No, I can't. Because that's, like I said earlier, I'm not competitive in Smash. All I'm saying is I like this controller. I think it was pretty neat, and you guys should check it out if you want to. If you're interested, there's a link in the description to both Retro Fighters and to Stone Age Gamer. Huge shout out to both of them for making this video possible. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. If you could do me a favor again, please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Social media stuff in the description, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, etc., as well as the new travel channel. I appreciate you guys going there and supporting all that stuff. Thank you very much. You're awesome. I'll see you all later.